It started the way most things in my life started, with something humming in my sock drawer. I ignored it at first, which given my history was a bold choice. Last time I ignored a humming sound, it turned out to be a misplaced calm crystal that ended up melting through 3 shirts, my floor tile, and precisely 1 cup of very hot coffee. I was told afterward the cup was irreplaceable. So were the pants I was wearing. But this hum had a melody to it. Not exactly a tune, more like a persuasive suggestion from a well-meaning AI that had taken a poetry elective. It got louder every time I tried to sleep. By the 4th hour, my bed had synced with the hum and was vibrating to the beat like an overenthusiastic nightclub in orbit. When I finally opened the drawer, there it was. A crystal, dull and squat, and shaped like something designed by an alien jeweler who specialized in brooding. It blinked twice, then spoke in a voice that sounded suspiciously like my alien friend, Leray, trying to impersonate an aristocrat. "You are summoned. Try to dress like a person this time." The crystal's glow pulsed warmly, like it was proud of itself. I stared at it, then at the socks. One of them blinked back. It was possible the humming had scrambled my reality sensors again. I muttered something unrepeatable, stuffed the crystal in my pocket, and walked straight into my closet door. Smooth, elegant, practically a diplomatic gesture in my culture. Later, over what passed for coffee on Virelon Station, half caffeine, half mystery, I confronted Leray in the Habitat Commons. She was lounging like she'd invented comfort, her long ears twitching slightly, which either meant she was nervous or trying not to laugh. Knowing her, both. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Did your mother just summon me?" Leary tilted her head. "I said invited." The crystal said summoned. "Well, it loses a little in translation." "That's not a little. That's an intergalactic leap, a chasm." "Semantics," she said, and took a sip from her own drink, which hissed ominously. "Semantics is my job." "No," she corrected. "Your job is telling people how bad they are at semantics while accidentally insulting them in 7 dialects. Once, I insulted one matriarch once, and she laughed. She fainted, Theo. From joy. From rage." I rubbed my temples. "Why does your mother want to meet me?" "She's curious," Leary said slowly. "She thinks you're interesting. That's what people say right before dissecting frogs. Relax. If she wanted to dissect you, she'd at least buy you dinner first." That was not as comforting as she intended. Leary had the kind of sense of humor that could best be described as culturally disorienting. I once saw her convince an ambassador that smiling meant you were about to challenge someone to a duel. He spent 2 weeks walking around with a grimace like he'd eaten his own shoes. Still, I agreed. Not because I was brave, because saying no to an Alari matriarch's invitation felt like the diplomatic equivalent of kicking a beehive into a volcano. Plus, Leary promised me the food would be better than anything on Virelon, which was a low bar, given that the last cafeteria meal tried to bite me. The shuttle to Alarion was sleek, silver, and full of things that whispered when I wasn't looking. The AI pilot was named Trillium and introduced herself by asking me to confess my deepest regret. I told her about a sandwich I dropped in college, and she said, "That explains your aura." I didn't ask. Leary was oddly quiet during the ride, her fingers drumming against her seat's armrest in a rhythm that sounded like Morse code for "do not freak out." I was naturally already freaking out. When we landed, Alarion took my breath away. Literally. The air was rich in something my lungs weren't used to, and I had to gasp like a fish for a good 5 minutes before the adaptive filter in my collar adjusted. After that, though, it was beautiful. Sprawling structures that glowed faintly in the dusk, trees with leaves like shimmering glass, and streets paved with stone that played soft notes as you walked. Each step a chord in a slowly evolving planetary melody. Leray called it resonant urban design. I called it trippy. We were met by a procession of what I assumed were house staff, but could easily have been an orchestra or possibly a very fashion-forward security team. One of them handed me a towel. It had an embroidered warning, "Do not insult the curtains." I asked Leary. She just smiled and said, "You'll see." Melanie, Leary's mother, was waiting in the inner garden, Regal wasn't the word. Majestic, maybe. Terrifying, definitely. She was taller than Lyrae by a head, her skin the same pale opal hue, her hair done in cascading braids that shimmered like starlight. Her ears bore more rings than Saturn. Each one chimed softly when she moved. She studied me the way a scholar studies an ancient puzzle, or a cat eyes a laser pointer. Well, that's a relief, I said, and immediately stepped on a vine that screamed. Just a short, high-pitched eep. I jumped. Lyrae snorted behind me. Sensitive flora, Melani said calmly. Do not walk angry. They get startled. I'll walk cheerfully next time. Good. We dine at first moon. She glided away. I turned to Lyrae. She's going to eat me, isn't she? Lyrae looked genuinely amused. Number, but she might ask why you smell like ionized detergent. That's my cologne. That explains a lot. And that was how my first day began on Alarion. With a cursed sock drawer, a humming rock, one nearly offended matriarch, and a plant that now had a grudge against me. I had no idea what Melani really wanted, but I was starting to think the reason I was invited here wasn't just tea and small talk. Something was humming beneath the surface, and it wasn't coming from my socks this time. Dinner began with a gong. Not just any gong, a hovering, translucent orb that vibrated until it emitted a sound like an interstellar whale clearing its throat after a cold shower. It floated just outside the grand hall entrance and burped politely each time a guest entered. I was told it was called a resonance announcer, but I was fairly certain someone made that up to avoid admitting their culture used sentient soup bowls for social cues. Lyrae led me into the hall with the confident grace of someone who had absolutely not told me the dress code. I was wearing a slightly rumpled formal jacket and pants that had never quite adjusted to this planet's gravity. She wore her usual armored clothing, cleaned and polished to a mirror sheen, with a single pin shaped like a spiral galaxy on her collar. It pulsed gently, like it was trying to send me a message in Morse code. Probably, you're underdressed. The dining room was oval, vast, and alive. The ceiling rippled like water reflecting stars. The walls adjusted their opacity depending on the volume of the conversation. When someone laughed too loud, the room dimmed slightly as if to say, "Calm down, we're not animals." The table was long enough to require a minor shuttle to reach the other end, but only 6 people sat there. Melani, 3 other Ellery dignitaries, Lyrae, and me. A suspiciously small crowd for such an intimidating hall. "Welcome," Melani said, gesturing for me to sit to her left. "This evening is for honesty and palate expansion." "That sounds ominous," I said, seating myself cautiously. "It means you may learn truths you were not prepared for," she said. "Still ominous." The first course was served by a being who had no feet and glided across the floor as though skating on light. They set a glowing plate in front of me. It looked like a jellyfish, smelled like citrus, and made a faint whimpering noise when I picked up my fork. "It is not sentient," one of the dignitaries said before I could ask. "Only recently deceased," added another. I put down the fork. Lyrae leaned in. "You're making the traditional first-course face." "What face is that?" "Panic with a side of social anxiety." "I've been practicing." "Clearly." I finally took a bite. Surprisingly delicious, like star fruit and toasted hazelnuts, with a hint of regret. I tried not to think about the whimper. As we ate, conversation floated around the table, light and probing. The dignitaries asked questions in the style of philosophers who didn't want answers, only more elegant questions. Melani remained quiet, observing, occasionally sipping from a cup that changed color every time she looked at me. "Your nervous system is interesting," she said abruptly. "I get that a lot," I replied, "usually during medical scans. You have resistance to certain neural harmonics, rare, possibly inherited." "I once got hit by lightning," I offered helpfully. "That may also explain it." Melani's gaze shifted to Lyrae. "Did you tell him why he is truly here?" Lyrae coughed. "I thought it'd be more fun if he figured it out himself." "Fun," Melani echoed, like it was a word she'd only recently added to her vocabulary. The second course arrived in a floating bowl that rearranged its contents whenever I looked directly at it. The others seemed to eat without issue. Mine briefly morphed into a face that resembled my 5th-grade math teacher before turning into something neon and crunchy. I ate. It tasted like confusion and victory. The conversation turned toward language. Do you believe in universal semantics? One of the elders asked me. Absolutely not, I said. If there were, I wouldn't have accidentally proposed to a Zarnakian customs officer last year. You did what? Leary asked, choking on her drink. In my defense, I thought Gurak Tum meant thank you. Apparently it's closer to I submit my heart and internal organs to your lineage. The elder nodded solemnly. A noble sacrifice. I ran. He cried. It was a weird Tuesday. Even Milani smiled at that. Briefly, the room's walls brightened half a shade, indicating a rise in positive social energy. I was getting the hang of this. Dessert arrived in the form of a sphere that hovered over the plate. You had to inhale it, not eat it. One dignitary passed out from joy. I sneezed and saw my childhood. Twice. After the meal, we moved to a softer chamber, circular and filled with floating cushions and subtle, directionless music that seemed to be coming from the floor. A tray of post-dinner mints hovered near us, rotating slowly like they were enjoying the atmosphere. I took one. It whispered something about my posture. Melani turned to me again. You're not just a friend to my daughter, you are a variable. Thank you. A variable in a system long believed stable. A perturbation. You're really good at compliments. She means, Leray said, that you've done something unusual. What? Exist? You bonded with our language too well. Emotionally. I blinked. I do love good verbs. Ellery language has resonance threads, Melani explained. Most species process them. You absorb them. I'm a sponge. You're a mirror, she corrected. And perhaps a key. There was a silence filled only by ambient floor music. I ate another mint out of nervous habit. It sighed. Okay, I said. So I'm a linguistic mirror key. What's the lock? Melanie didn't answer. Instead, she stood and gestured for me to follow her to an adjacent chamber. It was a room filled with light. No source. Just light. And in the center, a sculpture. No, not a sculpture. A symbol. Twisting lines of energy, vibrating slowly in the air, suspended between nothing and nothing. It hummed in a tone I felt more than heard, somewhere in my teeth. It's a cultural cipher, Leray said beside me. Thousands of years old, unreadable, unsingable. Until you arrived, Melani finished. When you spoke at dinner, it changed. I swallowed. I just made a joke about Zarnakian mating customs. You aligned a dormant thread, by accident. Of course, that's how I do everything important. Melani reached out and touched the symbol. It pulsed in response like it recognized her. Then it dimmed. You may be the bridge, she said softly, but bridges can be burned or built. That's ominous again. Leray looked at me, ears angled strangely. She means, we think you're part of something bigger. Maybe with me. Maybe because of me. Because we're friends? Because of how we're friends. And suddenly the air in the room wasn't just bioluminescent. It was charged, heavy with something unsaid. I tried to joke, tried to say something clever, but my mouth refused to play along. In the end, I said the only thing that felt true. I'm still not sure if this is a dream, a prank, or an accidental engagement ceremony. Melani smiled. Possibly all three. I woke up in a room I didn't recognize, which by now was less alarming than it should have been. The walls were humming softly in what sounded like a lullaby. The ceiling rotated gently, displaying constellations that weren't mine. And a small orb floated beside my bed, whispering compliments about my breathing rhythm. You possess admirable pulmonary patterns, it said in a tone that was almost flirty. Thanks, I muttered. You're not so bad yourself. My shoes were missing. My dignity, however, remained, barely, clinging to the end of my sleep tunic like a cat who regretted jumping. There was a note glowing on the table. No words, just a resonance pulse. When I touched it, it translated in my head. The cipher has changed again. Meet us in the archive. Bring your linguistic instincts. And don't touch any fruit on the way. One of them bit the ambassador. I found my shoes 3 minutes later embedded in the ceiling. I didn't ask. I just climbed the wall, muttering about alien gravity and vengeful footwear, and hoped the orb wouldn't record the moment for future blackmail. The archive was different this time. It had rearranged itself. Apparently, Alari architecture was prone to moods, and today it had decided to feel enigmatic. The walls twisted subtly inward. The light shimmered as though passing through water. In the center of the room stood the cipher again, except now it was moving on its own, weaving threads of language and sound in the air. Milani was already there, her long fingers tracing invisible lines. Leary stood off to the side, arms crossed, ears tilted in an expression I'd come to understand as a mixture of worry and mild embarrassment. "You change it again," she said, "without doing anything." "I sneezed." "That counts." Milani stepped forward. "The cipher has not shifted in over 1,000 cycles. Your presence unlocks more than meaning. It alters the structure." "That sounds like I'm breaking it." "You're engaging with it," she corrected, "like a song that finds its melody only when you hum without realizing." "I'm not humming." "You are internally." "Well," I said, "that's alarming." Leary joined us near the cipher. "We think it's tied to your perception. Something about how humans contextualize contradiction. We call it winging it." "Precisely." The cipher pulsed again, and a new pattern formed. This one had colors. Colors I couldn't name, twisting in mathematical shapes that looked like laughter and grief dancing at a wedding. A low note resonated in my chest. Not unpleasant, but insistent. Melani narrowed her eyes. "It's giving us a location." "A place?" "No," Leray said slowly. "A memory, one not bound by a single species." I stepped forward without thinking. The air thickened. The cipher expanded. For a moment, I wasn't in the room. I was in a corridor of shifting stone. Leary beside me, but older, tired. Somewhere ahead, Melani was arguing with someone I couldn't see, her voice urgent, fearful. The walls bled light. The atmosphere was wrong. Too hot, too quiet, too final. Then it collapsed. I fell backward into myself, gasping. Leary caught me. "You saw it too?" "Yeah," I said. "Time had stage fright. That's one way to put it." Melani was looking at me differently now, not like a puzzle, more like a book she'd thought was lost, now rediscovered on the wrong shelf. "You were meant to be here," she said softly. "Not by fate, by consequence." That was scarier. The next few days were a blur of testing, translating, and me insisting I needed at least 1 hour a day where no one asked me to realign a cosmic artifact with my subconscious. The cipher continued to evolve. Each interaction brought out new patterns. Fragments of forgotten culture, snippets of shared history between the Alari, and something else, something older, perhaps even human. We found recordings embedded in the resonance, a voice that resembled Lyray's but wasn't, an ancestor, a future echo. She spoke of bridges between species, of songs woven across worlds, of trust born not from treaties, but from absurd, accidental friendship. Leary and I spent long hours trying to interpret it. "It's talking about cultural merging," she said, "but metaphorically, through food, art, language, even awkward misunderstandings." "That's my specialty," I said. "I'm basically a walking diplomatic incident." She laughed genuinely. "You've helped more than you know. I've also insulted your wall plants, twice. They forgave you." Their leaves curled into a rude gesture. "That's forgiveness in plant speak." I smiled. For the first time I felt not alien, still weird, but accepted. In the final week, Milani hosted a gathering, not formal, not diplomatic, just a convergence of people who had interacted with the cipher. Stories were told, jokes exchanged. Food was less emotionally traumatic. Someone even performed a comedy routine in 6 languages at once, including one that used only eyebrow movements. Before I left, Milani took me aside. "You brought something we didn't expect," she said. "Not knowledge, not power, perspective." "I brought confusion," I replied. "Precisely. Confusion leads to questions. Questions lead to change." "I also brought an allergic reaction to your desserts." That was instructive for our chefs. She held out a hand, not formal, not royal, just human-shaped in its intent. I shook it. You may return when you wish, she said. Your presence is now a thread in our song. I nodded, unsure what to say. Then Lyrae appeared with my bag. My real bag, not the one full of confiscated planetary brochures and a towel that had somehow declared independence. You ready? She asked. Do I have a choice? Always, that's why it matters. We boarded the shuttle. As it lifted, a Larian shimmered below, the structures humming faintly, the city playing its music, the cipher's melody embedded somewhere in the wind. I looked at Lyrae. So, your mom still thinks I'm interesting? She thinks you're unpredictable. That's rarer. I'll take it. You better, she said, grinning. You're part of our weird now. As the stars stretched into lines, I sat back, exhaled, and thought about how far I'd come, from sock drawer summons to unlocking alien memories with badly timed jokes. I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was a bridge, a variable, a friend. And for once, that was enough. Eli was just trying to enjoy his usual late-night walk when the universe decided to throw a curveball, because that's exactly what happened when a woman with ears longer than a rabbit's suddenly appeared right in front of him, staring straight into his eyes like he was the answer to a question no one had thought to ask. He blinked, which did nothing to break her intense gaze, and then quite suddenly she started crying. Not a subtle sniffle or a polite tear, but full-on, uncontrollable sobbing. The kind that might have made a lesser man trip over his own feet. Hi? Eli said, because apparently that's the first thing you say when a total stranger with extra ear accessories bursts into tears at you. Do you need a tissue? Or maybe a glass of water? I don't have tissues, by the way. I'm fresh out. I did just buy this fancy new kind that plays music, but, it's in my jacket pocket somewhere. The alien woman, Eli decided to call her alien lady for lack of a better name at the moment, didn't stop crying. She just stared at him with those impossibly deep eyes that made him feel like she could read his entire life story and maybe judge him for binge-watching shows past midnight, which, to be honest, was a fair judgment. I'm Eli, he added, hoping to humanize himself in case she was some sort of interstellar interrogator. And you are, the person who's crying on my street? She finally managed to choke out something that sounded like a name. Leora. Eli had no idea how to pronounce it properly, so he just nodded like he understood, which was probably a bad idea but felt polite. So, Leora, Eli said, trying to switch gears and not just be the human tissue dispenser. Any particular reason you're crying in my driveway? Or is this some kind of alien greeting ritual? Because if it is, I think you should know we usually just say hello. Or wave. Crying's a bit of an overkill. Leora's lips twitched, maybe the closest thing to a smile Eli could interpret. Or maybe she was just fighting off more tears. Then she blinked slowly and said, I have seen many stars fall, and in your eyes I saw the last one. Eli squinted, not sure if that was a metaphor or if she thought he was literally holding a fallen star in his eyeballs. I'm just a guy with bad eyesight and worse luck. No stars in these eyes, sorry to disappoint. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the kind of silence that makes you wonder if you should say something profound or just ask where the nearest coffee shop was because this was getting weird. Okay, Eli said finally, so you're an alien crying at me, talking about stars falling. Should I be worried, like world-ending worried, or is this more of a help me find my space cat kind of thing? Lyra wiped her tears with the sleeve of what looked like a coat woven from shimmering threads Eli was sure did not come from any earth sheep. My people, we have suffered. The stars, once our guides, are now our mourners. You are part of this sorrow. Eli raised an eyebrow. Great, so I'm either a cosmic beacon of doom or your new therapist. Either way, I should probably get paid for this. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, which Eli took as a yes. Maybe aliens were just like humans, but with a more dramatic flair for the tragic. So what's the plan, Leora? Sit around crying until the stars come back? Or do we try to do something about it? Eli asked, feeling both ridiculous and oddly protective. Leora looked up at him, her long ears twitching slightly, which Eli found strangely endearing. I do not know the way, but perhaps together we can find it. Eli scratched his head. Sounds like a buddy cop movie. You're the mysterious alien with a tragic past. I'm the reluctant human with a knack for bad jokes, except without the car chases, unfortunately. A small laugh escaped Leora's lips, a sound so rare that Eli felt it was a victory. Your humor, it is peculiar, but it comforts. Well, someone's got to keep the cosmic crisis light, right? Eli said. By the way, how do you feel about snacks? Because this whole space mystery thing is making me hungry. And just like that, amidst tears and starlit prophecies, two unlikely companions began a journey neither of them could have predicted. One filled with danger, secrets, and maybe, just maybe, the chance to change the fate of the stars themselves. But first, Eli was determined to teach Leora what a proper Earth snack looked like, starting with something called a chocolate chip cookie. Eli found himself sitting cross-legged on the floor of his cramped apartment, a plate of chocolate chip cookies between him and Leora, who watched the strange, round objects as if they might suddenly sprout wings and fly away. "So these are Earth's finest offerings to calm space trauma?" she asked, her long ears twitching as if absorbing every crumb of information with delicate precision. "Well, they don't cure interstellar heartbreak, but they're pretty good with a cup of coffee," Eli said, reaching for his own cookie with a grin. "You've got to ease into Earth culture slowly. First cookies, then maybe the mysteries of binge-watching bad reality TV." Leora tilted her head, studying him with a curiosity that almost made Eli forget the whole cosmic weight sitting on their shoulders. "I do not understand your species' obsession with consuming sugar in circular baked forms. It seems inefficient." Eli laughed. "Inefficient? That's one way to put it. But it's kind of our thing. We're like a bunch of sugar-powered chaos engines." The moment stretched between them, filled with the odd comfort of shared laughter, before Leora's expression grew serious once more. "Eli, you must understand why I came here. The stars are not merely lights. They are the consciousness of my people's ancestors, guides across the void. Their fall signifies the unraveling of our collective memory and spirit." Eli rubbed his temple. "You're saying the stars are like space grandpas? And they're dropping like flies?" "In a manner of speaking," Leora replied, eyes shimmering. "Our bond with them is ancient, psychic, and now it is breaking. I sought you because your eyes, they hold a fragment of that bond." Eli blinked, trying to wrap his mind around the idea that his own gaze might carry cosmic weight. "Great, so I'm either a beacon of hope or a walking psychic beacon for alien grief. Just another day in the life." "Your humor again," Leora said softly. "It is a defense and a bridge." Eli smiled, feeling the weight in her words. "Okay, so what's next? You don't look like someone who just cries at strangers for fun. What's the real story?" Leora hesitated, then said, "My homeworld, Alindra, was shattered by a war not just of weapons, but of minds. A rogue faction sought to sever our psychic connections to the stars, to control memory itself. I escaped with fragments of our collective consciousness trapped within me." Eli's eyes widened. "So you're like a walking hard drive for an entire civilization?" "In some ways, yes, and they want it back." The gravity of her words settled in, but Eli couldn't resist a joke. "Well, I've lost my phone like 10 times this week. If you want to keep your data safe, maybe avoid my neighborhood." Leora's lips twitched again. "Your species' resilience is unexpected." Eli leaned back, suddenly curious. "Tell me about this psychic bond. How does it work?" Leora closed her eyes briefly. "We share memories, emotions, and knowledge across generations through it. It's how we remain connected across light years and time. But now the bond is breaking. I feel it fracturing, and with it, the essence of my people fading." "So you came to me because you thought I could fix this psychic Wi-Fi?" Eli asked. "In a manner of speaking." Your eyes reflected the last star's light, a sign that our fates are intertwined. Eli chuckled. "Great, fate and stars and psychic Wi-Fi. Just when I thought my life was normal." Leora's gaze softened. "There is more. Our connection is not accidental. It is a thread woven by an ancient prophecy, one that speaks of a human and an Alindran who will restore the bond." Eli stared at her, feeling both overwhelmed and oddly honored. "Prophecies, huh? I always figured those were made up by people who like drama. In my culture, they are warnings and hopes intertwined, Leora said. Sounds like my last family reunion, Eli muttered. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden knock on the door. Eli's heart jumped. Who could that be at this hour? Unless the aliens finally sent a welcome committee. Leora's eyes narrowed. It may be them. Eli rose cautiously, moving to the door. Peering through the peephole, he saw a shadowy figure silhouetted against the dim hallway light. Great, Eli whispered. Visitors with no warning. Just what I needed. The doorbell rang again, insistent. Leora stepped closer, her voice low but steady. They seek the fragments within me. We must be cautious. Eli grabbed a baseball bat from the corner, a decidedly low-tech weapon in a high-tech crisis. But it was what he had. Okay, psychic star lady, ready to turn this into a buddy cop showdown? She nodded once, determination flashing in her eyes. Together. Eli opened the door just enough to confront the visitor, only to find a man wearing a dull gray jacket and an expression that said, I'm definitely not here to borrow sugar. Can I help you? Eli asked, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The man smiled thinly. We're just here to have a friendly chat about your new friend. Eli glanced back at Leora, who tensed visibly. Yeah, sure. Chat. Because everyone loves unexpected visits from strangers who want to discuss alien refugees. The man's smile faded. This is serious. You don't know what you're involved in. Eli smirked. Buddy, I just found out I'm a walking psychic hotspot. I think I can handle a chat. Leora stepped forward, her voice calm but commanding. Leave now, or you will face consequences beyond your understanding. The man hesitated, then stepped back. This isn't over. The door closed, leaving Eli and Leora standing in the quiet apartment once more. Eli looked at her, half exasperated, half amused. Well, that was fun. You sure you don't want to try some reality TV instead? Leora smiled softly. I believe our journey has only just begun. Eli nodded, realizing that his life had changed forever. Somehow, between cookies, awkward jokes, and alien tears, he was now part of something vast, something that stretched across stars and time. And if that wasn't the weirdest thing to happen to him this week, he didn't know what was. Eli woke up with the unmistakable feeling that his life had officially turned into something out of a science fiction soap opera, and not the kind with flashy spaceships or laser battles, but the kind where the only explosions were in his brain trying to keep up. Leora was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, her long ears twitching in a way that suggested she had just hacked into the universe's worst-kept secrets, and maybe ordered breakfast through telepathy, because Eli swore she smelled faintly of something like cinnamon. So, Eli said, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, what's the plan? We can't exactly hang around my place forever. My neighbors already think I'm weird, and this is going to crank it up to 11. Leora's eyes met his with calm resolve. We must seek the Oracle of Valnira. She is the last who holds the knowledge to restore the bond between the stars and my people. Oracle, huh? Sounds like someone with a lot of patience and probably a caffeine addiction, Eli joked, trying to mask the sudden spike of nervous energy in his chest. The journey will not be easy, Leora said. Valnira resides beyond the nebula of whispering shadows, a place where time folds upon itself and space becomes a maze. Eli groaned. Great, a cosmic funhouse. Just what I wanted on my to-do list. They prepared for departure, with Eli stuffing what he hoped were enough supplies, mostly snacks and an embarrassingly large first aid kit, into his worn backpack. Leora's coat shimmered softly as she adjusted the armor plating on her shoulders, a reminder that this wasn't some ordinary road trip. As they stepped into the small shuttle Leora had brought, Eli felt a strange mixture of excitement and mild terror. The controls looked more organic than mechanical, pulsing with a light that responded to her touch. You pilot this thing? Eli asked, half expecting a witty reply. I do not pilot, I commune with it. It responds to my will, Leora said, her voice calm but filled with reverence. Eli blinked. Cool. I'm more of a push all the buttons and hope for the best kind of guy. With a soft hum, the shuttle lifted off, slipping through the atmosphere with a grace that made Eli's stomach flip. Outside the window, Earth's familiar blues and greens gave way to the vast velvet of space sprinkled with glittering stars. But there was something else, a strange darkness weaving between constellations, like fingers trying to snatch the light. That is the nebula of whispering shadows, Leora said, voice dropping to a whisper. Many who enter lose their way, trapped in illusions of their deepest fears. Eli swallowed hard. Illusions, huh? So if I start seeing giant talking sandwiches accusing me of eating their cousins, that's the nebula messing with my head? Precisely, Leora confirmed. Great. I was hoping to avoid the sandwiches, Eli muttered. As they approached the nebula, strange lights danced across the cockpit's translucent walls, shifting and twisting like smoke. Suddenly, the shuttle lurched, throwing Eli forward into his seat. Hold on, Leora commanded, fingers glowing as she connected with the controls in a way Eli still couldn't fully understand. Inside the nebula, time seemed to bend and twist. Moments stretched and contracted, and shadows whispered secrets Eli couldn't quite catch. Images flickered, memories, fears, and fragments of distant galaxies. Eli saw flashes of his childhood dog, of missed opportunities, and, inexplicably, a giant rubber duck wearing a space helmet. Okay, that's definitely the nebula, Eli said, clutching the armrest. Next time, can we skip the parts with the giant rubber ducks? Leora's eyes shone with concentration. Focus on the bond between us, Eli. Our connection will guide us. Trying to ignore the odd visions, Eli reached out and took Leora's hand. A warm pulse traveled from her to him, steady and real amid the shifting illusions. He closed his eyes, focusing on the steady rhythm, the promise of something beyond the confusion. The nebula's grasp loosened, and the shuttle broke free into calm, starlit space. Eli exhaled deeply. Made it through without being eaten by cosmic ducks. I'd call that a win. Leora smiled faintly. We are close. Ahead, a luminous figure awaited, a woman surrounded by swirling lights, her eyes like galaxies themselves, the Oracle of Val-Nera. You have journeyed far, the Oracle's voice echoed, both gentle and commanding. The bond you seek to restore is fragile, broken by betrayal and forgotten oaths. Yet in your union lies hope. Eli raised an eyebrow. Hope is good. Do you accept credit cards or barter for that kind of thing? The Oracle's gaze softened. Humor is a rare light in the darkness. It will serve you well. Leora stepped forward, voice steady. How do we mend the bond? The Oracle extended a hand, and in it appeared a small crystal, pulsing with a soft blue light. This is the heart of Alindra. It holds the essence of your people's memory. To restore the bond, it must be returned to the wellspring of stars, a place beyond time's edge. Eli glanced at the crystal, then back at the Oracle. And I suppose the wellspring isn't just around the corner? Correct. The path is perilous and guarded by those who seek to keep the bond broken, the Oracle warned. Eli rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Guardians, broken bonds, cosmic treasure hunts. Sounds like a Tuesday. So, what's our first move? The Oracle smiled. Trust in your bond. Together you can overcome. As the shuttle prepared to depart, Eli looked over at Leora. Well, space friend, looks like we're in this for the long haul. Think your armor can handle more rubber duck illusions? Leora chuckled softly, a sound as rare and precious as a star's last light. With you, I think we can face anything. And so, with the crystal's soft glow lighting their way, they set course for the wellspring of stars, unaware of the shadows gathering behind them. Shadows hungry for the bond to remain broken and for the stars to fall forever. The journey to the wellspring of stars was shaping up to be less of a cosmic stroll and more like a marathon through a minefield of existential crises. But Eli was determined to keep his sense of humor intact, mostly for his own sanity. He sat strapped into the shuttle's passenger seat, fiddling with the crystal that glowed softly on the dashboard. You know, he said to Leora, who was at the controls with her long ears flicking thoughtfully, if we ever get through this, I want to write a book. Title, How to Survive Intergalactic Prophecies and Still Keep Your Socks Clean. Catchy, right? Leora glanced over, one eyebrow arched, a distinctly alien expression that made Eli grin. Your humor remains a constant enigma, yet it eases the weight of our task. That's the plan, Eli said, tapping the crystal gently. Okay, so this little gem is the key to fixing everything, right? Any chance it doubles as a universal remote? Because I'm still figuring out how to work this shuttle. Leora chuckled softly, a rare and almost musical sound. The heart of Elindra is not a device for mundane tasks, Eli. It carries the memory and soul of my people. We must protect it from those who would see our bonds shattered forever. Eli nodded solemnly, then grinned. Got it. Cosmic soul gem. No pressure. As the shuttle glided deeper into uncharted space, the stars outside began to shimmer with an unnatural glow. That's the Veil of Echoes, Leora explained, a region where the past and present collide. Many travelers become lost in their own histories here. Eli leaned forward, peering out the window. Suddenly, ghostly images flickered past. Echoes of battles long ended, moments of joy and heartbreak, memories that weren't his but tugged at his heart anyway. Whoa, Eli muttered. Space is starting to feel like a soap opera with special effects. Leora smiled faintly. We must focus. The veil tests not only the mind but the soul. Just then, the shuttle jolted violently. Alarms blared and the lights flickered. What now? Eli shouted over the noise. Energy siphons, Leora declared. Pirates of the void. They seek the heart. Eli scrambled to his feet, trying to remember any movie he'd seen that ended well in space pirate encounters. Do they have a Yelp rating? Because if they're this dramatic, I'd guess not. The cockpit door hissed open, and in strode a group clad in sleek armor, their helmets reflecting the dim light. The leader stepped forward, voice cold. Hand over the heart of Elindra, and no one gets hurt. Leora stood tall, eyes blazing. You will find no peace here. Eli, still holding onto a chair for balance, tried his best to look intimidating. Look, can we just talk this out? Maybe over coffee. I make a mean cup. The pirate leader smirked. You amuse me, human, but amusement will not save you. Suddenly, the shuttle rocked as blasts echoed outside. Leora moved with fluid grace, activating energy shields that shimmered around the ship's core. Eli ducked behind the console. Great, now we're in a space bar fight. I'm not even sure I know which way to punch. Amid the chaos, Leora reached out and touched the crystal. A surge of light filled the room, and for a moment, everything stilled. The pirates frozen, the alarms silenced. Your bond with the heart grants you power, the pirate leader whispered, eyes wide with fear and awe. Eli peeked over the console. Hey, psychic space lady, can you maybe work that magic on a pizza? I'm starving. Leora's lips twitched in a rare smile. Focus, Eli. With a steady voice, she spoke words in a language older than the stars themselves. The crystal pulsed brighter, and the pirates' weapons powered down. You cannot possess what binds us all, Leora said firmly. The wellspring awaits, and we shall not be stopped. The pirates exchanged uneasy glances, then retreated, their ship vanishing into the star-streaked void. Eli exhaled, lowering himself back into his seat. Well, that was easier than I thought. Space pirates with no sense of personal boundaries and terrible timing. Classic Leora's gaze softened as she looked at him. Your presence grounds me, Eli. Together we withstand the trials. He grinned. Grounding alien ladies with broken psychic bonds. Yeah, that sounds like a new hobby. As they resumed their course, the stars ahead shimmered brighter, guiding them toward the wellspring of stars. Eli felt a strange mix of hope and apprehension. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning of their cosmic adventure, and somehow, with Leora by his side, he was ready to face whatever the universe threw at them next. The wellspring of stars was nothing like Eli had imagined. No gleaming temples or crystal towers, just an ancient, swirling pool of light suspended in the blackness of space, as if the universe itself had taken a deep breath and held it there for a moment. Eli blinked, feeling the weight of everything that had brought him here. The tears, the battles, the endless jokes that somehow made the impossible bearable. Leora stepped beside him, her long ears twitching softly. This is where the bond was broken, where the pain began. Eli nodded, swallowing a lump in his throat. and where it's going to get fixed, right? Yes, but the heart of Elindra must be returned to the wellspring, and the memory of our people healed. Only then can the bond be restored, and the tears cease. He glanced down at the crystal, now glowing with a steady, comforting light. Well, if putting it back here means no more surprise crying fits, I'm all in. Together they approached the wellspring. Eli reached out, the crystal warm in his palm. As he touched the pool of light, a shock of energy rippled through him. Memories. Flooding his mind, not his own but Leora's, her people's. He saw planets lost to war, families torn apart, sacrifices made in silence. I didn't know, Eli whispered. All this pain you carried alone. Leora's voice was soft. The bond is more than connection. It is trust, sacrifice, love. But betrayal shattered it, and I carried the weight of that alone. Eli squeezed her hand. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. The wellspring pulsed, absorbing the crystal's light. Slowly the shimmering pool expanded, bathing them in warmth. The tears that had once stained Leora's eyes transformed into a radiant glow, the sorrow lifting like morning mist. Eli laughed quietly. Look at you, glowing like a cosmic disco ball. Not bad. Leora smiled, the first truly unburdened smile Eli had seen. Perhaps now, we can both heal. As the bond mended, Eli felt a shift within himself. The man who had stumbled into the unknown, cracked jokes to hide his fear, was changing. He understood now that bravery wasn't about facing battles alone, but about sharing pain, hope, and laughter with others, even those from worlds light years away. Guess this means no more rubber duck illusions in the nebula, Eli joked, nudging her gently. Unfortunately, Leora replied, but with you, even the darkest shadows seem lighter. They stood together, the wellspring glowing behind them, a symbol of healing and unity. Their journey had begun with tears and confusion, but it ended with something far greater: understanding, friendship, and a future forged between two very different souls. Eli looked at Leora, her long ears catching the light, and smiled. So what now? Galactic peacekeepers? Interstellar therapists? Leora laughed, the sound warm and bright. Whatever comes, we face it together. And in that moment, under the endless stars, Eli knew he was exactly where he belonged, at the heart of a story far bigger than himself, one that had taught him the true meaning of connection across galaxies. The first time Jonah saw her, she was standing by the docking bay, chained to a rusted pillar like some forgotten relic from a bygone era. Not exactly the grand introduction anyone hopes for when meeting an alien warrior queen, but there it was. Long ears poked through tangled black hair, and her eyes flicked over the crowd like a hawk trapped in a cage. Slave, someone muttered nearby, as if that explained everything. Jonas, who had spent half his life salvaging broken tech and the other half avoiding trouble, wasn't convinced. Slaves didn't glare with that much attitude. He glanced at the sign flashing above the docking bay. Orbital Nexus. The last stop before nowhere. If nowhere was a galaxy-sized junkyard where the lost and desperate gathered, then maybe that explained the chains. Jonas adjusted the strap of his tool belt and gave a half-hearted cough. Hey, don't look at me. I'm just here for the droids that barely work, not to judge life choices. The alien woman didn't respond, but the faintest twitch of her lips hinted she'd heard him. Jonas knew better than to expect kindness. The last time he tried to make small talk with a machine gun-wielding bounty hunter, he ended up learning new and creative ways to say oops. Still, there was something magnetic about her, like she was a storm barely contained beneath that quiet exterior. His curiosity got the better of him. He sidled closer, trying not to trip over the uneven metal plates that littered the floor. So, what's your story? Besides the obvious, I'm chained up and probably dangerous part. She lifted a brow. You really want to know? You might regret it. Jonas laughed, the sound echoing off the metal walls. Regret is my middle name. Well, not officially. That would be Walter, but regret sounds cooler. The woman's eyes glinted with something unreadable. Names don't matter much when you're treated like property. Fair point, Jonas said, rubbing the back of his neck. So, what are you? Rumor has it you're some kind of vampire. And if that's true, I hope you're at least the glamorous kind with a killer soundtrack. She snorted. If I had a soundtrack, it would probably be more doom metal than glam rock. Jonas grinned. I like your style. So, vampire or warrior or both? Because honestly, I've heard worse urban legends around here, like the one about the space squid that's actually just a guy in a bad suit. Her smile was sharper this time. More warrior than vampire. But don't expect me to sparkle in sunlight. He shook his head. Good, because I'm allergic to glitter. Their banter was interrupted by the screech of engines overhead and a blaring announcement that the Imperial Patrol was making rounds. Jonas felt the familiar prickle of danger. Well, this is my cue to pretend I'm invisible. Spoiler alert, I'm terrible at it. The woman tilted her head. You're not invisible. Neither am I. But together, maybe we can be dangerous. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Dangerous, huh? I usually settle for mildly annoying. Beginner's level, she said dryly, but you might surprise me. As the patrol shadow passed over the station, Jonas glanced back at her chains. You know, I'm not great at breaking into high-security prisons, but I'm pretty good at breaking things that aren't supposed to break, like droids, or maybe these chains. She looked at him as if weighing a decision. If you break my chains, you become my partner. Are you ready for that kind of trouble? Jonas grinned, the kind of grin that meant he was already in deeper than he wanted to admit. Trouble's kind of my business. Besides, I'm running low on boring days. The moment stretched, charged with the unspoken promise of chaos and maybe something resembling hope. Around them, the station hummed with the usual clatter, voices trading rumors, distant blaster shots, and the steady pulse of a galaxy that never slept. Somewhere in the mix, two unlikely allies were about to rewrite their destinies, or at least cause a lot of trouble trying. Jonas tugged at the first chain, testing its resistance. You ever think about how ridiculous this whole slave thing is? I mean, you look like you could snap a starship in half with those hands. She smiled, a brief, rare light in a world that usually offered none. Maybe that's why they chained me. Fear makes people do strange things. Fear's a lousy motivator. I mean, I'm scared of space rats and they barely do anything. She laughed, low and genuine, the kind of sound that made Jonas forget how many times he'd been nearly vaporized this week. Space rats? That's adorable. Hey, don't knock it. One of those little guys took a chunk out of my ankle last week. Almost lost a shoe. Their laughter faded as the patrol's alarms grew louder. Jonas glanced around, already calculating escape routes. So what's the plan? Because sitting here chained up isn't exactly winning us friends. First, you break the chains. Then we see if your talent for breaking things extends to Imperial tech. Jonas smirked. If I pull this off, do I get to keep the title of most dangerous partner? She met his gaze steadily. If you survive, maybe. With that, the space station's neon lights flickered, casting long shadows over two figures bound by fate and a shared thirst for freedom. And just maybe, a little bit of chaos. Jonas crouched low behind a crate that smelled like burnt circuits and something suspiciously like old space cheese. So, breaking chains is easy. Breaking into Imperial prisons? Less so, but hey, that's what I get paid for. Or would get paid for, if anyone ever actually paid me. He glanced over at Kira, who was already scanning their surroundings with those sharp, long-eared instincts. You know, if we make it out of this alive, I'm thinking a vacation. Somewhere with less Imperial patrols and more beach. Kira's gaze never wavered from the approaching footsteps. A vacation sounds improbable, but if we survive, I'll consider it. Maybe somewhere with fresh air and fewer idiots shooting at us. Sounds like paradise, Jonas grinned, pulling a small device from his pocket, a plasma cutter jury rig from a dozen spare parts. Let's start with these chains. You might want to brace yourself for some sparks and questionable smells. She rolled her eyes. I've survived worse, mostly because I'm not as fragile as I look. Jonas chuckled. I was going to say, you don't look like someone who breaks easily, more like someone who breaks things. The cutter hissed and sparked as Jonas worked, the chains beginning to glow red hot. Kira shifted, her eyes flickering with something deeper. Memories Jonas couldn't yet touch. Shadows of battles fought in galaxies far older than his own. He cleared his throat awkwardly. You know, I read somewhere that vampire warriors have a thing for dramatic entrances. Ever tried one of those? She smirked, the corners of her mouth twitching despite herself. I'm saving that for when we actually escape. Just as the chains began to give way, a sharp clatter echoed down the corridor. Jonas froze, his heart pounding. Great, patrol's early. Or maybe they just hate my guts. Kira's eyes narrowed. Or maybe they smell weakness. Jonas shrugged. Yeah, I'm probably the weak link here. The door at the end of the hall hissed open, and 2 Imperial guards stepped in. Blasters ready. Jonas whispered, Okay, time for plan B. Spoiler, I didn't really have one. Kira's voice was calm, deadly. Step aside. Before Jonas could blink, she moved, fast and fluid, like a shadow come alive. One guard barely had time to react before Kira's hand was on his throat, a whisper of strength that bent metal and bone alike. The other guard aimed his blaster, but Kira's eyes flashed, and the shot missed by inches, vaporizing a panel on the wall. Jonas ducked behind the crate, watching as she dispatched the guards with brutal efficiency, her movements both graceful and terrifying. When the last guard crumpled, Kira turned back to Jonas, a hint of amusement in her voice. Not exactly subtle, but effective. Jonas grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. Subtle's overrated. Besides, you make deadly vampire warrior look good. She shook her head. I don't do this for style points. Good thing. I'm all out of those. With the chains finally broken, Kira flexed her wrists, the faint glow of bioenergetic veins pulsing beneath her skin. Jonas couldn't help but stare. Okay, so this whole vampire thing, what's the deal? You sparkle, you bleed, or do you just punch things really hard? She gave a dry laugh. None of the above. I'm a predator, not a myth. My kind survives on strength and speed, not fairy tales. Jonas nodded slowly. So basically a badass with attitude. Exactly. They moved quickly through the winding corridors, avoiding patrols with a mixture of luck, Kira's instincts, and Jonas's questionable stealth skills. At one point, Jonas tripped over a loose wire, cursing under his breath. Stealth is definitely not my strong suit. Kira smirked. You're lucky I'm faster than you. Yeah, just don't leave me behind when we take over the galaxy. They reached a maintenance hatch leading to the lower levels, a place where the shadows were thick and the hum of forgotten machines filled the air. Jonas hacked into the panel, fingers flying over the keypad. I swear, if this thing had a password like password 123, I'd retire right here. The panel beeped green, and the hatch creaked open. They slipped inside, descending into a labyrinth of pipes and vents. Jonas muttered, Nothing like a crawl space to make you feel alive. Kira chuckled softly. Keep talking, and I might reconsider saving you. Their banter eased the tension, turning a desperate escape into something oddly familiar, a partnership forged in fire and laughter. Jonas couldn't help but feel that beneath her warrior's armor and vampire's curse, Kira was as much a survivor as he was. 2 unlikely souls bound by fate, hurtling through the cold expanse of space toward an uncertain future. As they crept through the tunnels, a flicker of light caught Kira's eye. She paused, fingers brushing a faded symbol etched into the wall, an ancient insignia, half forgotten but powerful. This, she whispered, is a reminder. My past is not just chains and captivity. It's a legacy. Jonas squinted. Sounds heavy. Want me to lighten the mood with a joke? She raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Why don't aliens eat clowns? Because they taste funny. Kira laughed, the sound echoing softly in the dark. That was terrible, but effective. They pressed on, unaware that the ripples of their escape were already spreading through the corridors of power. Somewhere in the shadows, watchers stirred, those who feared the awakening of a vampire warrior and the chaos she would bring. But for now, in the quiet hum of forgotten tunnels, 2 fugitives shared a moment of hope and humor. And that, Jonas thought, was worth more than all the stars in the sky. The corridor was quiet for a moment, which Jonas found suspicious. Quiet was rarely a good sign in places like this. So, if silence is golden, then we're probably about to get hit with the platinum version of trouble, huh? He muttered. Kira didn't answer right away, her long ears twitching like some kind of alien radar. Keep moving. We're not alone. Jonas nodded, swallowing a joke about how being alone might have been preferable to Imperial patrols hunting them down like space rats. Got it. Alone is overrated anyway. They crept forward, the shadows playing tricks on their eyes. Suddenly, the hum of machinery shifted, and a panel slid open on the wall, revealing a hidden alcove. Great, Jonas whispered, because everyone knows the best hiding spots in space stations are those suspiciously clean, well-lit holes. Kira stepped inside, inspecting a console embedded in the wall. This is an access node for the station's security grid. We can disable the patrol drones from here. Jonas raised an eyebrow. You mean we get to mess with Imperial tech without getting vaporized? Now that's my kind of fun. She smirked. Don't celebrate just yet. It won't be easy. As Kira connected her wrist implant to the console, Jonas peeked out into the corridor, catching sight of glowing red sensors sweeping slowly back and forth. Looks like the patrols upgraded from blasters to eyeball lasers. I'm not sure if I'm more scared of the patrols or the station's sense of paranoia. Kira chuckled. Paranoia's a survival skill around here. Jonas's fingers drummed nervously against the wall. Survival skill? I thought running like hell was a survival skill. She narrowed her eyes, her voice low. That too. The console flickered as Kira worked through layers of encryption, her fingers moving with practiced precision. Jonas watched, fascinated by the way her long ears caught every sound, every subtle shift in the station's electronic heartbeat. You really are more than just a vampire warrior, huh? You're a hacker too? She shot him a sideways glance. I have to be. Strength alone won't get you through this. Jonas grinned. Multi-talented. I'm impressed. I once tried hacking a vending machine and ended up ordering 47 cans of fizzy water. Not exactly heroic. Kira laughed softly, the sound a rare and welcome warmth in the cold, sterile alcove. At least you didn't get caught. Barely, Jonas admitted, though the machine still owes me a refund. Suddenly, the console beeped, and the patrol drone's red lights flickered and faded. That's our cue, Kira said, retracting her wrist implant. The patrols are blind for now, but it won't last. Jonas grabbed her arm. Blind patrols means we run. Or do we sneak? Because I'm really good at running. She smiled, a fierce glint in her eyes. Running it is, but this time we run with purpose. They dashed into the maze of corridors, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Jonas stumbled over loose cables, swearing under his breath. I'm starting to think these stations are designed by sadists. Kira didn't laugh. They probably are. Their path led them to the station's central hub, a vast chamber filled with consoles, holographic maps, and the distant hum of the core reactor. Jonas stopped, eyes wide. Whoa, this place looks like the brain of a starship. You sure this isn't a secret alien warship disguised as a prison? Kira shook her head. No disguise. This is the heart of their operations. Control this, and we control the station. Jonas looked at the glowing holograms, some depicting star systems, others flashing warnings in alien scripts. So what's the plan? Because I'm getting way out of my depth here. She stepped forward, fingers brushing a console. We send a message, a broadcast to the outer colonies. The Empire needs to know there's resistance, and that their prized slave is anything but powerless. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Broadcast? Like a space soap opera teaser? Tune in next week for more vampire warrior escapades? Kira smiled. If it gets people talking, why not? As she prepared the transmission, alarms suddenly blared through the station. Guess they found out about the hacking, Jonas quipped. Kira's expression hardened. They've sent reinforcements. We don't have much time. Jonas glanced around frantically. So, we fight, run, or negotiate our way out of this? Kira cocked her head. Negotiation with Imperial soldiers usually ends with one of us in chains. I vote fight, then run. Jonas grinned, hefting a plasma pistol he'd picked up earlier. I'm not the best shot, but I make up for it with enthusiasm. She laughed, drawing a blade that shimmered with an unnatural glow. Then let's give them a show. The battle was sudden and chaotic, blaster fire echoing off the metal walls. Jonas dodged clumsily, firing wildly but managing to keep the soldiers at bay. Kira moved with lethal grace, her blade cutting through the air, slicing through armor and threats alike. "Hey, watch the upholstery!" Jonas shouted as a blast sent sparks flying near him. Kira smirked. "Try to keep up." Amid the chaos, Jonas felt a strange thrill, the kind that only comes from standing on the edge of disaster and laughing in its face. "You know, I always thought being a space outlaw would be glamorous. Turns out it's mostly dodging laser bolts and making bad jokes." She nodded, eyes fierce yet amused. "Glamour is overrated. Survival isn't." When the last guard fell, silence returned, heavy but victorious. Jonas slumped against a console, panting. "So, does this mean we're officially rebels now? Because I'm terrible at paperwork." Kira's eyes met his, serious but kind. "We're more than rebels. We're the beginning of something new." Jonas smiled despite himself. "Well, if this is the start of a galactic revolution, I hope it involves fewer chains and more vacation days." She laughed softly. "We'll see." And as the broadcast signal pulsed through the stars, a message of hope and defiance echoed across the galaxy. The slave was no longer silent, the warrior was awake, and a new alliance was forged in the fires of rebellion. Jonas stared at the cracked holoscreen flickering in front of them. "So, we sent the Empire a little, 'Hello, we're here and we're mad' message. Any chance they'll just shrug and go back to their paperwork?" He rubbed his hands together. "Because I'm really not in the mood for another round of imperial fun." Kira smirked, brushing a strand of her yellow hair behind one of those long, pointed ears. "They never shrug, Jonas. They escalate. It's their favorite hobby, right after inventory audits." Jonas groaned. "Imperial bureaucracy and tyranny, two peas in a pod. At least one comes with coffee breaks." She tapped the console again, eyes scanning the incoming data streams. "Good news is the message has sparked interest in the outer colonies. People are watching. The Empire's grip isn't as tight as it thinks." Jonas grinned. "So we're celebrities now?" "I always knew my terrible jokes would pay off." Kira laughed softly. "Fame has its perks. Mostly enemies, but still." Suddenly, a sharp alarm pierced the calm. "Incoming transmission," the console announced. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "From who?" "The Empire, I hope. I like a good welcome back to misery greeting." Kira's expression darkened. "Not quite. It's, unexpected." The screen flickered to life, revealing a shadowed figure cloaked in a shimmering field of shifting colors. "Kira," the voice said, smooth and measured. "I've been looking for you." Jonas peeked at the screen. "Great. Someone else who's got your number. I hope it's not a telemarketer." The figure stepped forward, revealing a face both alien and human, a blend of familiar and foreign. "I am Saren, once a warrior like you, now something else." Kira's eyes narrowed. "What do you want, Saren?" "To warn you, the Empire is moving faster than you realize. Your broadcast has lit a fire, but it has also called the Hunters." Jonas muttered, "Hunters? Sounds like a bad space soap, or maybe a space hunting reality show." "Who will survive the Imperial Purge?" Kira ignored him. "Tell me more." Saren's voice dropped to a whisper. "There is an artifact, ancient, powerful. The Empire seeks it to control not just worlds, but time itself." Jonas blinked. "Time control? So basically, the ultimate cheat code?" Saren nodded. "Exactly. If they succeed, no rebellion will stand. No alliance will survive. You must find it first." Kira's jaw tightened. "Where is it?" "That is the secret I carry. But I can help you find it, if you trust me." Jonas raised his hands dramatically. "Trust is hard to come by when everyone wants to kill you or enslave you. But hey, I'm an optimist." Kira studied Saren carefully, weighing the offer. "Fine, but one wrong move, and I'll make sure your name is the last thing you remember." Saren smiled, faint but genuine. "Understood." As the transmission ended, Jonas rubbed his temples. "So now we're on a treasure hunt across the galaxy, because apparently simple escapes are boring." Kira chuckled. "Adventure suits you." Jonas groaned. "Suit me? I barely fit into my own clothes." They set course for the coordinates Saren had provided, a remote system rumored to hide ruins older than the Empire itself. I hope these ruins have less security than that last station, Jonas muttered. Kira smiled. You'll have plenty of time to practice your stealth. Jonas groaned again. At this rate, I'll need a new nickname. How about Clumsy Ghost? She laughed. Fits you. As their ship sped through hyperspace, a quiet moment settled between them. Jonas glanced at Kira, her expression resolute yet tinged with something softer. You ever think about what comes after all this? After fighting, running, hiding? She looked out the viewport, stars stretching into streaks. Freedom. For me, that means more than just escaping chains. It means reclaiming who I am. Jonas nodded slowly. And for me? I think it means finding a reason to stay, not just run. Kira turned to him, a smile tugging at her lips. Then maybe we're both looking for the same thing. He grinned. Great, because I'm terrible at running alone. She reached out, clasping his hand briefly. Then let's stop running. Jonas looked at her, surprised but hopeful. Wow, deep for a vampire warrior. She shrugged. Even warriors have soft spots. Their laughter filled the cockpit as stars sped past, carrying them toward unknown dangers and unexpected alliances. Somewhere out there, the Empire's shadow loomed large. But so did the spark of rebellion, and with it, the promise that even the darkest nights could be broken by light, and a well-timed bad joke. The artifact pulsed softly in Kira's hands, its ancient energy humming through the cramped cabin. Jonas squinted at it like it was some kind of alien fruit. So what exactly does this thing do? Besides glowing and making us feel like we're in a low-budget sci-fi flick? Kira smiled, her long ears twitching slightly. It controls time, sort of. Not like a time machine, more like a dimmer switch for moments. You can slow things down, speed them up, but not rewrite history. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Dimmer switch, huh? So it's like the universe's weirdest remote control? Something like that, she said, eyes serious. And in the wrong hands, it could mean endless oppression. The Empire would never just rule. They'd trap everyone in their perfect nightmare forever. Jonas rubbed his chin thoughtfully. So we've got to keep this from the Empire. Again. What a shocker. Kira laughed softly. I know. But this time, we have allies. The colonies are waking up, inspired by what we started. Jonas grinned. Look at us, accidental heroes with a knack for trouble. Their ship shook suddenly. Alarms blared. Imperial fighter, Jonas muttered, scrambling to the controls. And they brought the fireworks. Kira's eyes narrowed. Ready to dance? Jonas smirked. I hope your vampire reflexes come with a dance card. The dogfight was chaotic, lasers crisscrossing the void outside like cosmic fireworks. Jonas piloted with surprising skill, while Kira's blades shimmered as she defended the ship's core systems during a boarding attempt. Hey, Empire scum! Ever heard of personal space? One of the boarding drones miscalculated, stumbling into the force field and short-circuiting spectacularly. Jonas gave a thumbs up. That's one less bad guy. Kira parried another attacker. We're not out of this yet. Hold on. After a tense skirmish, the Imperial ships retreated, their signals scrambled by a mysterious cloaked vessel appearing on the sensors. Jonas groaned. Great. More friends or more foes? The cloaked ship docked, and out stepped Saren, the warrior from before, looking a bit less mysterious and a lot more like trouble. I've come to help, Saren said, holding out a data chip. This contains coordinates to the Empire's command nexus. Kira took the chip cautiously. Why help us now? Saren's eyes gleamed. Because I believe in your cause, and because I'm tired of running alone. Jonas snorted. See? Everyone loves a good reunion tour. Together, the three plotted their final strike against the Empire's heart, combining the artifact's power with the colony's uprising and the element of surprise. The battle was fierce and relentless, but every move was calculated, every risk measured. In the heat of the fight, Jonas found himself face to face with an Imperial commander, their blasters pointed at each other. Jonas joked through clenched teeth, You ever consider a career change? I hear space janitors get decent benefits. The commander sneered, but before the shot could fire, Kira appeared, her blade flashing. Time's up, she said. When the dust settled, the Empire's grip on the galaxy was broken, the command nexus destroyed, and freedom rippled across the stars. Kira stood amid the wreckage, the artifact safely sealed away, its power respected but no longer a threat. Jonas looked at her, a smile tugging at his lips. So, what's next? Galactic peace? Retirement on a beach planet? Kira shook her head, laughing softly. Nope. I think we've earned some rest, and maybe a few less explosions. Jonas chuckled. I could get used to that. As they prepared to leave the battlefield behind, Kira felt a new strength within. A warrior no longer bound by chains, a leader ready to shape the future. Jonas had changed too, from a reluctant sidekick into a partner who believed in something greater. They glanced at each other, the unspoken promise clear. Whatever came next, they would face it together, their alliance forged in fire and humor, their destinies forever intertwined. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, a galaxy breathed a little easier, knowing its unlikely heroes had awakened.